Russia is ramping up production of its T-90 tanks and restoring its pre-war reserves, signaling it may be preparing to pose a long-term military threat to NATO, analysts at the Institute for the Study of War said in an assessment. According to the open-source intelligence group Frontelligence Insight, internal documents from Russia's main tank producer, Uralvagonzavod, reveal plans to increase T-90 tank production by 80% by 2028 compared to 2024 levels. The factory also intends to launch production of a new variant, the T-90M2. Analysts estimate that from 2026 to 2036, UVZ will upgrade more than 2,000 tanks, including T-90M, T-90M2, and T-72B3M models. Combined with the tanks built during 2024 to 2025, that volume would be enough to fully restore Russia's armored fleet in preparation for a potential future large-scale war. Open-source data also shows that Russia is increasing repairs of T-72 tanks. At the same time, ISW notes a sharp decline in the use of tanks on the battlefield, suggesting Moscow may be stockpiling armored vehicles and preparing to modernize its reserves, both for continued operations in Ukraine and for a potential confrontation with NATO. ISW warns that Russia could pose a significant threat to the alliance well before 2036, even without fully rebuilding its tank arsenal. Despite suffering heavy losses in Ukraine, the Russian military retains the ability to regenerate manpower, the assessment said. According to ISW, Russia will likely maintain substantial combat power for several months after active fighting in Ukraine ends, allowing it to rapidly shift forces to NATO's eastern flank. Russian military planners are also developing new concepts of operations and battlefield tactics that enable large-scale combat without relying heavily on tanks or armored vehicles. Simultaneously, Moscow is working on methods to deny an adversary the ability to use its own armored forces effectively at scale. Additionally, experts say Russian forces are learning how to strike enemy rear areas and disrupt logistics from the air without needing full air superiority. This approach allows them to achieve the effect of aerial interception without establishing outright dominance in the skies. Still, ISW said there is no indication that Russia's military leadership plans to wait for a full rebuild before escalating attacks against NATO member states. On the contrary, it may act sooner if the alliance fails to maintain adequate deterrence.
In August 2025, the Russian armed forces deployed 100,000 troops to Dropilia, but the Ukrainian army knew of the enemy's plans and prepared, said Lieutenant Colonel Arsen Lemko-Dmitrik, Chief of Staff of the 1st Corps of the National Guard. The Russians took advantage of rainy days, when not a single drone was in the air, to break through. For the breakthrough near Dropilia, the Russians assembled soldiers from the 51st and 8th Armies, as well as infantry from the Russian Navy. Dmitrik explained in an interview with The War Zone. To stop the enemy, a single command post was established in early August, which planned all the details of the operation. About 100 commanders arrived at the hottest section of the front. In a conversation with TWZ, the Lieutenant Colonel revealed some details of the battle planning and execution, which prevented cascading consequences along the front line. According to him, the 1st Azov Corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, along with the commander of the Airborne Forces and the Unmanned Systems Forces unit, were assembled in the dangerous area. General Alexander Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, oversaw the process. Dmitrik was asked how the Ukrainians knew about the Russians' plans, whether the information came from people or from drones. The serviceman declined to elaborate, but explained that the success at Dropilia was the result of the combined efforts of commanders, each bringing their own expertise to the table. This command center was built on the Azov base. However, different commanders contributed their own unique knowledge. It's not that this particular commander brought us our greatest success. It's a shared success, he explained. Dmitrik described the enemy's tactics during the breakthrough in the Dropilia direction. It turned out that the Russians are exploiting rainy weather for offensive operations when drones on both sides are unable to take off. Before the attack, motorcycles advance, their main task being to clear the road of mines. The breakthrough is accompanied by artillery strikes. After the mines are cleared, columns of 5 to 6 vehicles advance. A tank leads the way, followed by other armored vehicles. If the tanks manage to break through in some area, they are followed by light armored vehicles as well as buggies and motorcycles. Ukrainian soldiers call this tactic a meat grinder. The enemy is using tanks and armored vehicles to breach Ukrainian defenses. The enemy attempted to carry out assault missions during inclement weather such as rain, but aircraft cannot be used in rain. Why did the enemy choose this particular type of equipment? To prevent our Ukrainian drones from attacking them because of the rain, said the Azov chief of staff. The soldier explained how they managed to stop the Russian breakthrough near Dropilia. It turned out that the Ukrainians operated in small groups to counterattack the enemy from different flanks. The commander did not reveal the number of people in the groups or what weapons they used, as the operation was still ongoing. He also noted that the fighting continues until the leaves fall. When the leaves fall, the Russians will come up with new tactics because they are learning. Dmitrik said, "Sorry, this operation isn't over yet, so we can't comment on it. But there are some areas on the front line where the enemy has completely surrendered, but it's not a huge number, only a few dozen people," the Azov fighter emphasized. Russian forces have reinforced defenses around the illegally built Kerch Bridge in occupied Crimea. Petro Andriushchenko, head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, said the barrier now consists of 3 lines of defense, a barge and 2 protective barriers stretching along the entire Kerch Bridge. Andriushchenko wrote on Telegram. He noted that previous Russian defenses near the bridge were destroyed by storms. The level of anxiety over the main totem of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is rising. Andriushchenko added, Ukrainian forces will inevitably strike the bridge linking occupied Crimea to Russia. It's only a matter of time. Roman Parkanov, deputy commander of Ukraine's 14th Separate Unmanned Aviation Regiment, said in an interview with NV, "We can expect strikes on the bridge any day, this year, next year. It will happen. I assure you, you'll see it." He emphasized that targeting the Crimean bridge has been a standing military objective since the first day of Russia's full-scale invasion. But to carry it out, Ukraine needs the right strike capabilities, and that includes more than just Ukraine's long-range drones like the Lyuty kamikaze UAVs. According to Parkanov, before a successful attack can be launched, Ukrainian forces must first disable the radar systems and Russian air defenses currently targeting Ukrainian drones. "We're working on that," he said. Sooner or later, there will be strikes on the Crimean bridge and other sites in Crimea. They've truly turned Crimea into an unsinkable aircraft carrier. It's the most heavily defended and militarized area. Recently, military analyst Michael Clark wrote that Ukraine might be preparing a surprise strike, possibly targeting Crimea before the onset of winter. Recall the Security Service of Ukraine carried out the 3rd attack against the Crimean bridge since Russia's full-scale war began in 2022, mining and damaging its underwater supports on June the 3rd. God loves the Trinity, and the SBU always brings what is conceived to the end and never repeats itself. SBU Chief Vasyl Malyuk said in a statement posted on social media. Previously, we struck the Crimean bridge in 2022 and 2023, so today we continued this tradition underwater, he added. The SBU said the operation lasted for several months, with agents mining the supports of the illegal construction. Constructed after Russia's illegal occupation of Crimea in 2014, the Crimean Bridge is a critical supply and transport route for Russian forces to the occupied Ukrainian territories.